The story of Japan's ancient past is nothing short of remarkable. This island nation, isolated from the rest of the Asian continent, has been home to humans for over 38,000 years. But it's in the last 3,000 years that we see the most dramatic shifts, transformations that would turn this collection of islands into a highly advanced imperial state. At the heart of this transformation was agriculture, specifically rice farming, which forever altered how communities lived and interacted. These rapid changes happened in a vacuum, with Japan's geographical isolation creating a unique setting for the evolution of culture, politics, and technology. As we trace the history of Japan's people, it becomes clear that these shifts were not just agricultural but part of a larger migratory pattern linked to economic and cultural developments across Asia. For anyone interested in how migration, agriculture, and isolation combined to form modern Japan, this story offers key insights into human history. Before rice cultivation took root, Japan was home to a diverse set of hunter-gatherer-fisher societies known as the Jomon culture. The Jomon people lived in the archipelago for over 13,000 years, with evidence suggesting that they were among the earliest people in the world to make pottery. This pottery, which dates back over 16,000 years, is one of the hallmarks of Jomon society, showing that these people were highly innovative despite their reliance on foraging for survival. Unlike many early societies, the Jomon people didn't just rely on hunting and gathering. They also fished and employed varied subsistence strategies, giving them adaptability across Japan's many islands. Population numbers in the Jomon period fluctuated, likely tied to environmental conditions and the availability of resources. Yet, despite these challenges, the Jomon people maintained a stable existence until the arrival of the Yayoi culture, which would change the face of Japan forever. The end of the Jomon period around 3,000 years ago set the stage for a new era in Japan's history, one driven by agriculture and the rise of social complexity. Around 3,000 years ago, the Yayoi culture emerged, marking a pivotal shift in Japan's history. With the introduction of paddy field rice farming, the Yayoi people began to transform the landscape, both physically and socially. Agriculture allowed for more permanent settlements and supported larger populations, sparking the beginnings of social hierarchies and organized communities. Unlike the more nomadic Jomon, the Yayoi were largely agrarian, cultivating rice in wet fields, a practice that had come to Japan from continental Asia. This development brought not only food security, but also new tools and technologies. Bronze and iron began to appear, and communities became more structured, with evidence of trade and interaction both within Japan and with mainland Asia. The introduction of rice farming had profound effects beyond the immediate. Social structures evolved, paving the way for more centralized forms of government and political organization. With larger communities came more interaction and conflict, leading to the need for governance, the first steps toward the formation of a state. As we look at the Yayoi period, we see the seeds of Japan's later imperial history being sown, a period of transformation that laid the foundation for the future of this island nation. Following the Yayoi period, Japan entered the Kofun period, around 1,700 years ago. This era was characterized by the rise of political centralization and the development of an imperial state, with powerful leaders overseeing vast territories. The Kofun period gets its name from the large, keyhole-shaped burial mounds that were built for the elite. These tombs, some of which are truly massive, reflect the growing social stratification and political power in ancient Japan. The Kofun rulers were able to consolidate control over large areas of Japan, unifying smaller, scattered communities into larger political entities. This was a time of immense social and cultural change, as Japan opened up to more interactions with the Korean peninsula and mainland China. This era also saw an increase in the import of continental technologies, weapons, and even written characters. The rulers of the Kofun period were not only powerful militarily, but also acted as intermediaries in the growing trade and political connections between Japan and its neighboring regions. This period laid the groundwork for Japan's imperial state, with a system of governance that would influence Japan for centuries to come. One of the most prominent hypotheses about the origins of modern Japanese people is the dual structure model. According to this theory, today's Japanese population is descended from two major groups: the indigenous Jomon people, who lived in Japan for thousands of years, and later migrants from East Eurasia, who arrived during the Yayoi period. This model suggests that the genetic makeup of modern Japanese people is a blend of these two groups, shaped by waves of migration over time. Initially, this theory was based on physical traits such as differences in skull shape between ancient and modern populations. However, recent genetic studies have confirmed the dual structure model, showing that modern Japanese have inherited DNA from both the Jomon and the Yayoi populations. This genetic blending highlights the complexity of Japan's population history, with at least two waves of migration contributing to the genetic makeup we see today. These findings also challenge earlier ideas that the Yayoi people simply replaced the Jomon, instead suggesting a more nuanced interaction between these groups, with both contributing to the formation of modern Japanese society. Genetic studies have provided crucial insights into Japan's ancient population history. By examining ancient skeletal remains, researchers have identified two major waves of migration to the Japanese archipelago. The first wave consists of the Jomon people, who were already established in Japan thousands of years before the arrival of the Yayoi. The second wave began with the Yayoi period, bringing new populations from East Eurasia who introduced rice farming and other agricultural practices. Through mitochondrial and Y chromosome DNA analysis, researchers have uncovered distinct genetic signatures among the Jomon and Yayoi populations. For instance, the Jomon are characterized by unique mitochondrial haplogroups that are rare outside Japan today, while the Yayoi and later Kofun individuals share haplogroups more commonly found in East Asia. This genetic evidence shows a clear distinction between the Jomon and the newcomers from the mainland. Furthermore, the mixing of these populations during the Yayoi period led to a genetic structure that continues to influence modern Japanese people today. These findings illustrate how migration and genetic exchange played a key role in shaping the population of ancient Japan. For years, it was assumed that the Yayoi people, who introduced rice farming to Japan, descended from populations in the Yellow River Basin in China, where agriculture first emerged. However, genetic evidence tells a different story. Researchers have found that the Yayoi have closer genetic ties to populations from the West Liao River Basin and the Amur River regions in northeast China, rather than the Yellow River region. These groups from the north had no direct connection to rice farming, which challenges the idea that the introduction of agriculture to Japan was solely tied to migration from the Yellow River Basin. Instead, the genetic data suggest that the people who brought rice cultivation to Japan may have been part of a more complex web of migrations, with influences from various parts of Northeast Asia. This unexpected finding adds a new layer of complexity to our understanding of how agriculture spread to Japan. It also raises questions about the cultural and genetic exchanges that occurred during this period of rapid change, as different populations came together and shared knowledge, technologies, and traditions. As we move from the Yayoi to the Kofun period, we see another wave of migration that further shaped Japan's genetic landscape. The Kofun period was a time of significant cultural and political change, marked by the consolidation of power and the formation of an imperial state. Genetic analysis of individuals from this period reveals that the Kofun people had a different genetic makeup compared to the Yayoi. While the Yayoi had mixed ancestry from both the Jomon and Northeast Asian populations, the Kofun individuals show a higher proportion of East Asian ancestry, particularly from regions like China and Korea. This suggests that there was continued migration to Japan during the Kofun period, with new populations bringing different genetic influences. Interestingly, this genetic diversity is also reflected in the archaeological record, with evidence of cultural and political ties between Japan and its continental neighbors. These interactions were likely driven by trade and the exchange of goods, technologies, and ideas. The Kofun period represents a turning point in Japan's history, where the foundations of the modern Japanese state were laid, and the genetic makeup of the population began to resemble that of today's Japanese people.